So you've been good?
Yeah, I've been good. I've been good. Been in the gym. Been, working. Same old on the grind right now. It's springtime, so not summertime yet. Not time to let go. Still locked in. What about you?
Starting to get locked in. A little bit
Mhm.
deviating for a little bit. But gotta get gotta get back on the grind. With finals coming up and everything. Um,
Mhm. Yeah.
yeah, been but excited for the summer though. Super excited for the summer.
Me too. Me
Yeah,
too. Definitely think this summer is going to be really fun.
yeah.
Um, lot of potential ideas for traveling as well.
Where at?
Well, personally, I've always wanted to go to New Zealand.
New
I
Zealand.
know. Yeah. So basically, the reason why I like New Zealand, it's really isolated. It's in its own part of the world. Progressive society, really nice landscapes, really beautiful. Just place to be. You know what I mean? Like if when you're going on vacation, you don't want to be stressed because you obviously want to take a little bit of time for yourself. So like, I just found recently New Zealand has been calling to me. I've been feeling the
Mm,
energy in there, just vibrating and just hitting me on my head.
mm. How'd you get the idea of New Zealand? Like how'd that pop up? That's so unique.
I Uh, yeah, yeah. I've been on YouTube 4K videos, like drone videos, because I was thinking of getting a drone just to like shoot video of my area, but yeah, I just found a 4K video of New Zealand. Specifically, I forgot Auckland. I forgot what the capital is, but I found a 4K video of it, and I just started getting deeper into the rabbit hole. You know what I mean? I did some research. I was like, wait a second, this place is dope. It's a really nice area. The only downside is that the tickets are like 2.5K, 3K, so it's really expensive to go there.
Steep. But like once you get there,
Yeah, steep.
once you get there, how
Yep.
is it still expensive or?
Yeah. So the it is slightly more expensive, like the currency rate. Yeah.
Mm,
So it's not a place to go if you just wanna. I know what you mean. Yeah,
mm,
it is a little bit more expensive.
mm.
What about you? What are you looking at?
For me, if I could travel anywhere, it would be like, I mean, we can get into this later, but you know,
Mm-hmm.
India, bro. Oh my God, when I was there, not an ounce of anxiety or stress. Like I didn't realize how
Mm-hmm.
anxious I was until
Mm-hmm.
until I got to India and felt how free I was, right, or light. I felt so
Mm-hmm.
light there, especially being in
Mm-hmm.
Dharamsala, close to Garo Rinpoche. It's just a different feeling. And of course,
Yeah.
our motherland, Puh, you know,
Yeah. Yeah. For sure. For
we're
sure.
banned, but it's all right. It's all right.
We are banned. We are a hard banned. They found us on the roster. They were like, wait a second, red flag, bro. What?
Yeah.
Like, come on, man.
What else have I been doing? I've been balling a lot with my friends here, playing basketball, weightlifting.
Hmm. Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
You've been watching the NBA or?
I watched the Kings versus Warriors game last night. Yeah, you know how I play. I play fast, so like I was looking at
Yeah.
Darren Fox, but
I always said you're like a hybrid of John Morant and De'Aaron Fox. That's what I've
I,
always
I
said. And
appreciate that.
yeah, honestly, that's actually
Yeah,
honest. Like, got the speed, got the agility, creative finishes.
I appreciate it. But yeah, Darren Fox didn't play that well last night. Yeah, uh,
Yeah, the Kings still won though, impressively.
yeah.
Yeah.
The Kings haven't been in the playoffs since we were in like fifth grade or something, right?
Yeah, like since we were like, I think 2006 was the last time. So it's been like almost 16, 17 years now.
Damn,
There's a whole generation of kids now that never seen their kids. That's crazy.
damn. How about your Lakers? What are you thinking?
Oh man, I'm excited, man. Like, listen, there's been a lot of hate going on for the past years on my Lakers. Like, people have been saying bubble ring this, bubble ring that. Listen, uh, did I waver my faith? I'll be honest. Did I waver my faith? Yes, I wavered my faith. I thought for a second there, I thought, hey man, maybe the Lakers are never gonna go back. Maybe that one ring was it. But this year we're looking good. Minnesota, I mean, it was a good game. Like, personally, I think D'Angelo Russell specifically, he didn't play too well because he was originally from Minnesota before he got traded to Los Angeles, and I think that just being back in Minnesota probably messed with his like psyche. And obviously, like it's hard being a Lakers point guard. Like the Lakers are such a high pressure team. Like you're going to be in your head a lot. I feel like, and he's a shooter, he's a playmaker, so it's hard for him to like do that if he's psyched out, you know.
Mm.
So like I think that was the reason why D'Lo didn't play good. But I do think this upcoming series, first game is today at 3 p.m. I think it's going to be a good one. I think if you are trying to get someone into watching NBA, definitely watch the Lakers Grizzlies series because
Mm.
this is going to be a good series. Ja Morant versus LeBron James, like that's as good as it gets. Like first round, come on, man. Like the GOAT versus the we don't need to get into that. I don't gotta say too much there.
Has D'Angelo Russell ever been in the playoffs before?
Oh yeah. No, he went off a couple years ago on Brooklyn when he was playing with the Nets. Like it was a really young team. It was like end of I think 2017 to 2019, 20 yeah, something like that.
Mm.
But he was playing really well in the playoffs.
Mm.
In a 7 game series because this whole playing thing is new. It's only been around for like 2-3 years. So
Mm. True.
before then, it was just everyone just got seeded.
True.
Yeah.
But also, speaking of the summer again, one thing I'm excited
Mm-hmm.
about is to do these podcast recordings in person, bro. Like if you're not traveling, if I'm not traveling, dude,
Oh,
that'd be fire, right? Uh, it's different,
don't let orange juice link up. Don't let orange juice link
bro.
up.
These conversations when they happen in person, they're different, bro. They're different. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, not now we're just sharing it with the world, but
Yeah, of course. I'll put us live.
Mhm.
All right, we're going live in Jik, Ni, Sum. All right, we're live. We're back with the Pidgeot Boys. All right. How's your Pidgeot this morning?
It's been better. I'll be honest, it's been better with the news that's going around. It's been better. How's yours?
Yeah, with all the things happening on social media, I feel like our Tibetan community has been attacked by the entire world a little bit. But we'll get into that later. My name's Tenzin Suruloje. This is my host. This is my co-host.
Denzi Yunda.
And then we are the Pidgeot Podcast. This is our first ever episode. So make sure to subscribe on YouTube, on Spotify. Just type in Pidgeot Podcast. You can probably find it in the link somewhere. Make sure to share with your friends. We're an upcoming podcast catered for the Tibetan youth. So yeah, what do we have in store for today, Yunda?
So today on the Picture Podcast, we will be doing a 2023 Lobby Day recap, our personal experiences in Lobby Day and the surrounding infrastructure, our co-host Sidup's trip to India, and the recent news that's been circulating on social media about His Holiness the 14th Dalai Lama. So that's what's in store for today's podcast for y'all.
Okay, cool. So where should we start? Let's start with Lobby Day.
Yeah, let's do that.
Okay, so first, you've worked closely with ICT. You've interned with them before. Maybe you're a better person to speak about this. Can I ask you, first of all, can you explain to our audience, like, what is Lobby Day? What's the value of Lobby Day? Then we can get into, like, okay, what was the ask? What were we asking for Lobby Day, specifically this Lobby Day? And then then we can talk about our experiences. Yeah, how's that sound?
Yeah.
Cool. All right.
So yeah, for sure. So Lobby Day, in essence, is an event where Tibetan Americans and Tibet supporters from all across the country come together to Washington, D.C., typically in late March, to call for congressional initiatives to resolve the Tibet-China conflict. Specifically, what we're doing is we're targeting specific policies and asks and continued implementation of specific policies and asks from each congressional representative, either directly to the representative in some instances or to the interns who are working in the offices. It's coordinated by the National Campaign for Tibet, but it's also many other organizations do help with Lobby Day. It's a multi-task force that organizes it. And honestly, overall, it's just an experience for Tibetans and Tibetan supporters to come together and really mobilize to make real differences, because congressional officials do listen to the people that come into their offices. When you're working as an intern, one of the things that you need to do, be aware of, are the constituents who come into your office and what the asks are, and relaying that back to the congressional official, senator or representative. And overall, Lobby Day throughout the years has created many long-lasting relationships with congressional officials, and furthermore, it's created real change within United States policy towards Tibet. We've currently, at this point, we've got to the point where USA is very, very, very uh, moving in the right direction in terms of its uh, overall view on Tibet and the Tibetan issue. And a large part of that has to do with the work of Lobby Day and the work of the Tibetan Americans and the Tibetan supporters who come to DC during this time. Specifically for this year's Lobby Day, the policy asks that were the main focus point are the reintroduction of the promoting a resolution to the Tibet-China Conflict Act, also known as the Resolve Tibet Act. And this bill is going to pressure China's government to resume negotiations with Dalai Lama's envoys to settle the decades-old conflict caused by China's illegal occupation of Tibet and the brutal oppression of the Tibetan people. Additionally, it includes the priorities for this year's Lobby Day includes informing senators and representatives about the Tibet issue, maintaining American funding that benefits the Tibetan people, and pressing for the full implementation of the Reciprocal Access to Tibet Act and the Tibet Policy Support Act, while at the same time calling for the release of Tibetan political prisoners. So specifically, Reciprocal Access to Tibet Act, RADA basically is one of the main policy initiatives that got passed, but now needs to get implemented because obviously when you pass a bill, there's still a little bit of work that needs to be done for it to be fully implemented, rather than just sit around and just be law. It's one thing to conceptualize a concept, but to implement it is another step. So focusing on the implementation aspect of that in terms of really honing in on the officials who will not get access to coming into America
The Chinese,
because
sorry,
of their
the Chinese
their
officials.
go ahead. The Chinese officials, yep, the Chinese officials who will not going to get access to coming to America because of the actions that they've taken against the Tibetan people. So that's the main point of that. Is just saying like, hey, like if you're gonna come out to Tibetan people, if you're gonna oppress our religion and our freedom to be ourselves, that we, the American government, will take a stand and say, hey, like you're not going to be able to access the American economy, essentially, which is what we're saying, and the American political system, which is a big step. That's a really big step because for a lot of these Chinese officials, I mean, that's their whole job. They come here to lobby for pro-China policy, and RADA effectively negates their ability to do so, and they'll have to make calls and be like, hey, instead of me, I got to send someone else. You know what I mean? So that's the whole point of it. And calling for the release of Tibetan political prisoners, many Tibetan political prisoners right now that we either don't know where their whereabouts are, or we do know where their whereabouts are and nothing is being done about it. So that's another issue that really is one of the main focus points for this year's Tibetan Lobby Day.
I think from our specific ask, this year, the U.S. government trying to emphasize dialogues between the Chinese government and His Holiness's envoy, ambassadors, so to speak. I think that's a crucial point. It might be very conceptual. It might be, it might be just a symbolic support. But however, at the root of it, His Holiness always says, this conflict between the Tibetan people and the Chinese government is just between the Tibetan people and the Chinese government. It must be resolved by these two parties, right? And His Holiness's official stance and the Central Tibetan Administration's official stance is the middle way path, right? We want religious freedom, human rights in Tibet, but we'll be part of China if that's necessary, if that's the case, right? Because we get economic benefits from being part of China. I think that's the most practical approach. So I think and that starts. The first step to that is to have engaging conversations and dialogues, right? And we haven't had that in a while. So I think that's very important. And second to note, I remember the Reciprocal Access to Tibet Act, right, RADA. That is a concrete evidence for the impact of Lobby Day. Lobby Day,
I agree.
and that's a concrete example and evidence for how dialogue can become, you know, these solid things that we move towards. um you know, people say conversations don't mean anything sometimes, you know. But then, you know, it's because of the efforts of lobby day, you know. It took many years. I think it took 3 or 4 years, but then, you know, every lobby day, and of course, you know, the the everyday work of ICT and all these other Tibetan organizations
Mm-hmm.
impacted this. It's a collective effort. It
Yep.
was through dialogue that we got this act passed. So I think it just goes to show, you know, the importance of lobby day, how, you know, these conversations can become concrete. You know, and
Yes,
it
for
was
sure.
and it was during our time too, right? And like it was that was one of the
Yep.
main asks that we proposed to all of our Congress people when we were doing lobby day back in high school and
Yep.
even in college. Um,
Mm-hmm.
and like and you know, for me, lobby day was like one of the most educational and amazing experiences. Number one, I got to understand our political system, whether you're a
Mm-hmm.
political science, you know, student or not. Politics is that
Mm-hmm.
at the essence um,
Mm-hmm.
of, you know, our Tibetan survival, to sort of speak, right?
Yep. Yep.
um, maybe you can talk a little bit about your lobby day experience.
Yeah, no, 100% agree. I think that too often there's this conception that politics doesn't affect, like, it's just like the mindset that, oh, yeah, politics doesn't affect me. I'm not going to stay out of politics. That's cool. That's 100%. It's your right to do so. But at the end of the day, like, it does affect you. It 100% does affect your culture, your people, who you are, and like your day to day life, even to some extent. Maybe not yours specifically, but definitely your relatives and ancestral bloodlines in Tibet. Like, it definitely affects them. So to be engaged in the political process throughout any means, any way that you can, is very important. And I think that Lobby Day is one opportunity for Tibetans, and not only Tibetans, but Tibetan allies, which is important to have like allies that come and help us with our cause. Because the more allies we have, the bigger net of support that we'll gain, and the more support that we gain, the different types of ethnic communities can share it within their own ethnic communities, like what we're doing with the Uyghurs and what we're doing with Taiwanese and Hong Kong and all these people. Like, our message is getting spread right now because we're working with all these allies. And Lobby Day is another example of a place where all of the allies, every of the Tibetan movement, can come together and really make a change. Just like you said about with the Rada, like Rada is a concrete example because it's going to hinder their ability to do what they want to do. You know what I mean? And it's a power game at the end of the day. Like, they want power, they want to increase their power, and it's a way to limit their power. So if you think about it like that, it's a very good opportunity, not only for Tibetans, like I said, but also Tibetan allies, which is important. Like, to bring more people into Lobby Day is always good. It's
Mm-hmm.
always beneficial for the Tibetan movement.
Yeah. And then, you know,
Yeah.
in part, lobby day acts as a an opportunity to make new allies with Congress people that, you know, are
Mm-hmm.
new to the game, right? They have to understand we are a pipeline of information to them about what's happening inside of Tibet, right? And what we're doing here, you know, Tibetans as in exile, what we're trying to do to preserve our culture, you know, and fight for them, for the voiceless Tibetans inside of Tibet, right? Because a lot of our allies, to be frank, are old, right? Like
Yeah.
Nancy Pelosi, or, you know, even Richard Gere, you know, they're all getting up there, and I think we need to start building a new
Mm-hmm.
network of allies that truly care about the human rights, and truly understand the value of, you know, the Tibetan culture, and, you know, and how it's worth preserving. Um,
Yeah.
and speaking about new
100%.
allies, uh, I heard that, you know, ICT is having its first in-person Tibetan Youth Leadership Program since COVID. Is that right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it is right. This summer they'll be having the first in person youth leadership program. Just a quick overview of what it is. Obviously, you can learn more if you go directly to ict.com and safetibet.org, and you go look at the information that they're distributing. But a brief overview is that it's a great opportunity to meet like-minded young Tibetan leaders who are excelling in their own fields. Like, there's always a diverse cast of like very smart Tibetans that are in different fields: STEM, political science, law, um, medicine, health. science, like there's robotics, even like there's a lot of different fields that come into the Tibetan Youth Leadership Program and truly gain a lifelong foundational experience of learning about the way the Tibetan movement is currently interacting with the American political system and to see how that the interaction is taking place. Like it's good to know like that, yeah, like we're doing stuff for Tibet, but like how are we doing stuff to Tibet? To be articulate in that and to know not only the concepts but the implementation of the concepts and how they've been implemented by the various organizations that exist in the DMV area and in abroad, even like worldwide in Europe, in Australia, in Japan, and like a lot of places, Canada. Like this, it's a very critical part, and TYLP is just another way for you as a Tibetan American to be able to come and connect with the Tibetan American community while at the same time gaining valuable experience on leadership skills, communication skills, political science at its essence, political theory at its essence, and while at the same time meeting a bunch of very, very hardworking individuals who are working currently for the Tibetan movement in ICT and in the Office of Tibet and in many organizations in the DC area. There's many hardworking Tibetan Americans and Tibetan American allies that are currently working in these two institutions, and they give their heart and their soul and their passion to what they do. Like these are very hardworking people. They're literally committing their lives to helping the Tibetans on a day-to-day basis. So being able to interact with these people is what TYLP allows you to do. So if that interests you, then definitely go to savetibet.org. Go look at the information that's out there and really take advantage of these opportunities because you only have one life. And since you are Tibetan American or Tibetan American ally and knowledgeable of the situation, it's good to take advantage of it and to really seize the opportunity that's there.
Yeah. Yeah, you were a participant. You were a participant for Tibet Lobby Day, right?
Yeah, I was.
How was it?
What you mean the Tibet Youth Leadership Program?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it was good. I liked it very much. I think that obviously I've been around ICT my whole life, so I had a little bit of foresight in terms of like what we were gonna do. But it was in the middle of COVID, so it was all virtual. So that probably was a little bit hard to navigate. But I would say that it was still definitely very educational. We met with some interesting officials from U.S. departments and definitely gained information on career opportunities inside the federal government. Information that I don't think I would have gained if I wasn't a part of the program because the people that were coming in were giving us the specific links, specific job openings, specific fellowship, specific, there's just the specifics on it, the details on it, on where to go and how to find these opportunities to really enter the federal government or to find career pathways into the federal government that we wouldn't have been able to get without the program. So my experience overall was really good.
Yeah, and even if you're not exploring a career in federal government,
right.
like the knowledge you gain, like there's a way to serve our Tibetan cause without even being in politics, right? We understand that everyone should be engaged in politics, but that doesn't mean that it has to be your profession, in so to speak, right? And then like you said, it's really cool that there's Tibetan youth leaders with all different backgrounds coming to this event, right? So in fact, you learn as much from one another from like all the panelists or the other leaders of government officials that you probably meet. But that's really cool. I remember that like during Tibetan Sunday school or Puzen does like ICT would bring the TYLP participants to our Puzen Sunday classes, and they would talk a little bit.
Yeah.
I just remember like looking up to those jojos and ajas, and like all of them are doing extremely well. All of them have great careers, and at the same time, are fighting for our Tibetan cause in their own ways. So that's truly inspiring. And I know that this cohort and the previous cohorts and the future cohorts will all be an inspiration for future generations as well.
Totally agree.
Yeah.
So I know you said you recently came back from your trip to India. So if you want to talk a little bit about your experience and how it was? I know you said you felt the anxiety like fell off your shoulders basically, and like you felt engaged in the karma and everything. I'd like to hear about that. I think it'd be interesting.
Yeah. So I recently took a week off the semester to travel with Harvard Kennedy professors to Dharamsala to meet with Gyalromje for a 2-day summit called the Leadership and Happiness Summit. The Harvard Kennedy School is opening up this new, I guess, sort of department, so to speak, called the Happiness Laboratory, where they'll do research and conduct research and gather evidence about the value of happiness and how to obtain it, I guess. So during these 2-day events, it was incredible. All the participants, we had participants, from Harvard business professors, psychologists, researchers, mm, of course, donors, because they're opening up this new laboratory. And every single one of them said this was a life changing experience.
Mm-hmm.
This was a life changing experience. Um, during the 2 days, we met with His Holiness about an hour and a half each day. On one day, we talked about leadership and happiness. The next day, we talked about how can we inspire the youth to become leaders and to become happier. Then, my takeaway from those two dialogues was that, His Holiness is amazing, you know, and the value that other people, outsiders, foreigners, place upon him, the respect, the reverence. It was truly,
Yeah.
as a Tibetan, seeing an outsider put that much reverence, it was really even eye-opening to me. Uh, you know, some of the key takeaways, some of the key lessons I learned about leadership and happiness from Gyalromje and all the different Harvard panelists. Right. Number one, leadership is about service. It's to be of service to others. And to be service to others is where you find true happiness. Another one is that, leadership, we think about leadership about being a position, right?
Right.
Maybe it's your boss, maybe it's your manager. But what His Holiness said that is that, leadership is about teaching, not commanding. It's about teaching others and helping them grow, empowering them. Rather than telling what to do, you tell them why to do it and how to do it. Right. That made me, when I heard that, I remember my parents always, my mom was always telling me, get good grades and do this and that. I'm like, obviously I know that, but how do I do that? Tell me the plan, tell me the steps. Right. So that reminded me of that. But
yeah. Yeah, that's facts.
And then another lesson that I learned, and it maybe is a good segue for our next topic, is that His Holiness talked a lot about his suffering in these 2 days. Like, previously, I've listened to a few Gyalromje lectures and teachings. He doesn't talk too much about his suffering, or at least not in recent times. He talked about how he felt. Right. He talked about his first experience with loneliness. His first experience with loneliness was when he was put on the throne. Right? He felt disconnected from his family, the people, and then he truly felt lonely. That's his first experience. And I was like, wow, it goes back to, leadership is not a position, right? And it goes back to show you, the reason why His Holiness always says, I'm a simple Buddhist monk. It's to connect with everyone. And I think because with that mindset, he's able to not feel alone anymore. And I think that's one thing that we can definitely practice in our own daily lives. And then he talked about his suffering. He talked about how he had to stay calm when Mao Zedong said that religion is opioid. I was like, wow, he had at like 20 something years old, going against Mao Zedong, having those discussions. He had the self awareness to tell himself, "Oh, stay calm," because it was a shocking line to him, right? Religion is poison, or religion is opioid, right?
Yeah,
Um,
it's a very yeah.
and I think that's a good segue into what happened this week on Monday.
Right, right.
You know, it feels like the Tibetan community um, was targeted this week. Of course, His Holiness. Maybe you can share your thoughts before I go on a rant.
So my thoughts. I think that I think it's a situation, obviously, that definitely got blown out of proportion. I think that originally what His Holiness meant by it got lost in translation, and it was a cultural misunderstanding. Like Jalisa is a very, very common phrase in Tibetan culture, and it basically is just, and it's a way of affection. It's not a way of like any misconstrued way that they're trying to put it. I also think that the CCP definitely took advantage of the situation. I think that when seeing fire, the CCP definitely got the gas and started putting their machine to work to make this fire bigger and bigger and bigger and bigger. Because the bigger this fire gets, the more His Holiness gets discredited, and the more His Holiness gets discredited, the better it is for the CCP. Because at that point, the CCP understands that finances are a real thing and money is a real thing. So overall, I think that it's just a very unfortunate situation. I think that I wish people would just be more holistic in their interpretation of news. I think a lot of people just see the front side; they don't see the back side so much. If you get what I'm saying, like they don't really look too deep into the research and seeing is it true or is it not true? Where is it coming from? Why is it like this? Instead, what they do is they just jump on social media and they drop a post saying, "Oh, well, look at this, and now this." And you get what I'm saying? Like it's a very those types of people, their emotions are not in control, in my opinion. I don't think you can have emotional control and really just jump on something that quickly like that. I think it's better to be holistic in your approach and to really let your emotions settle, look at the situation, evaluate the situation before you post something on social media that goes out to millions of people. Because I definitely saw a lot of influencers posting it that I was questioning their critical thinking skills. I won't lie. Not even just like their morality, because I understand like it's a situation that definitely like yeah, like Western perspective, like yeah, how it looks, but their critical thinking skills, you know what I mean? Like is this someone that's really going to be thinking through their actions and the consequences of what they're posting? Because saying something against His Holiness the Dalai Lama not only affects His Holiness the Dalai Lama, but it affects the whole Tibetan community. And I feel like if you have a platform at some extent, you are aware of what your platform does and the message that it's sending. So, in my opinion, I just think that it's a lot of people whose critical thinking skills are being exposed right now. That it's not holistic, it's not well rounded, it's not the way to go about any type of situation. You know, like
Mm-hmm.
if your friend says something mean, you're not just gonna say something mean back. You're gonna be like, why did you say this? You know what I'm saying? Like there's a way you think and evaluate things. So
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
that's my take on it. And yeah, and go ahead. I know you have a lot to say, so go ahead.
No, just like the critical thinking skills. That's one thing for sure, right?
Mm-hmm.
People are when people see something, they naturally get emotional all of a sudden, right? Of course, that's a natural tendency of being human, right? But then, do you have the critical thinking skills? I think in the self awareness to say, "Oh, I am getting emotional," right?
Right.
Why am I getting emotional? Okay, you understand why you're getting emotional, right? But then it, now once you realize and acknowledge that emotion, can you go back to what made you emotional, which is the video, right? And what people
Mm-hmm.
were saying, like the catchy taglines, whatever it may be, right? The cropped video, the edited video. Okay,
And it's
is
very
this
edited.
isn't
It's super edited. Yeah.
this cropped edited video? Okay, is this the holistic view? Was this the entire lecture? What happened before? What happened after? Right? Why did His Holiness say that? Right? Then coming to that holistic understanding, um, it takes time, right?
Yes.
So I understand why most people reacted the way that they did, right? And the first thing, so I want to be very careful here. I don't want uh, my thoughts here to be misconstrued.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm gonna be very careful here.
Yeah.
The first thing that I thought when when I saw this video on Monday morning was that, oh, it's nothing. It's gonna blow by. Because I'm not on social media much. I'm
Mm-hmm.
only, I read through the daily news and I saw this. I was like, oh, His Holiness's legacy transcends all this pettiness, so it's fine. Um, but then throughout the day, I saw my friends kept talking about it. He's like, oh, this is trending on Twitter or whatever. I'm like, then like they're like, what does this mean? And I had to come to um, I had to explain to them or the cultural norms and His Holiness's personality and everything. Uh, and then when and I dove a little bit deeper after a few of my friends sent me this link or talked to me about it in person, and then it was trending on Twitter, it was trending in social media everywhere because I'm not on social media too often.
Mm-hmm.
So my first thought was that, oh shoot, I had to do a presentation in class later that day about my
Mm-hmm.
trip in India. I was like, let me
Mm-hmm.
cancel that presentation because um, if when people are emotional, people aren't logical. So if people aren't logical, they aren't going to resonate with the lessons that His Holiness taught me
Yeah.
during the trip. So
Mm-hmm.
that's the mathematics that I got to.
Yeah.
That's how I that's the reason why I emailed my professor saying that, okay, let me cancel the presentation today.
Mm-hmm.
There's some negative news out there. It might do more harm than good,
Yeah.
right? But during the hour and a half class or whatever, I looked around. I'm like, these kids. It doesn't matter to the kids too much,
Yeah.
right? It doesn't matter the news or whatever. Some of them may have not heard of it, right? So I gave my 5 minute presentation. Then
Right.
I'm glad that I did the presentation
Mm-hmm.
because the feedback that I got after doing the presentation was like, wow, that was an amazing trip. That was so cool. That's awesome. I never saw leadership in that manner. Never saw happiness as something that can be achieved. Whereas they thought the happiness is something that comes to them naturally, right? It's something that you can strive for. Um, so I'm glad that I was able to be a megaphone for His Holiness's message.
Mm-hmm.
Um, but the second thought that I had
Yep.
was, man, I feel so sorry for all these people that are hating on His Holiness at the moment. All right,
Yeah.
they come from a good place.
Right. Right.
I truly believe they come from a good place, because from the outside perspective, it may seem predatorial, right?
Right.
And when that's the case, when you have this misconception or preconception of something, you're likely to block anything that happens in the future, right? So in the future, if any of these people that have this misconception of what His Holiness is, in the future when they get
Mm-hmm.
introduced to His Holiness's teachings or wisdom, they will
Right. Right.
automatically block it because they don't have that rationality.
Yeah.
And that's when I
Yeah.
felt
There's no
true.
rationality there. Yeah.
That's when I felt true sadness and compassion for them, because they're this much step. They've blocked a path to happiness because His Holiness's wisdom
Yeah.
is
For real.
one of the best paths to happiness. His Holiness's
Agreed.
wisdom teaches us to be rational, teaches us to be compassionate, right? And because with those two together, it is the
Ethical.
formula for
Ethical. Yeah.
it's the form it's the formula to be happier.
Mm-hmm.
And these people have unfortunately blocked themselves from that in the future, because or
Exactly.
it's going to be more difficult for them at least to absorb His Holiness's wisdom, right?
Yeah.
So I think that we should empathize with them. One,
Mm-hmm.
of course, come to the defense of His Holiness, even though his legacy has transcended that. He himself, I'm sure, has transcended that, because he is a living Buddha, right? I don't think
Right. Right.
he's
Right.
necessarily affected by our everyday pettiness, so to speak. He's
Yeah.
transcended that. After 50, 60, 70 years of meditation practice, of Buddhist practice, daily
Mm-hmm.
practice, he's above all of this, right? So of course,
Right.
as Tibetans, we feel so much compassion for Gyaro Rinpoche. He's gone through so
Yeah.
much for us. He sacrificed so much for us, right? But I think we should have an optimistic view as Tibetans. Gyaro Rinpoche has gone through so much, has endured so much. Yet he smiles every day. He laughs
Yeah.
every day. He tickles everyone. You know, whoever
Mm-hmm.
he sees in pain or sadness, he tickles them because laughter is one of the best medicines out there.
Yeah.
Um, and then, I think this is an opportunity. Even before I go into that, just His Holiness, like you said, there was a culture norm, right? His Holiness's personality is to be playful. His Holiness's
Yeah.
personality is to be joyful and playful, and to break the ice, and that's the way His Holiness does that. And
Yeah.
if you've seen the video of the the child and the mother being interviewed, they had the most you know life changing experience.
Yeah,
They
and I find it's just like they don't want to even like it seems like media doesn't want to share that video. You know what I'm saying? That video definitely exists, and that video adds very clear context that it was not at all what the media initially portrayed it as. Like I saw CNN posted their initial thing, and they haven't even followed up on that. So it's just like I resonate with what you're saying right now. Like 100% understand. Like
right.
that video adds very clear key context that the kid and his mom were saying like nothing happened. Like it was like literally a good, well experience, a life. In fact, a core memory experience. Like it wasn't even just a good experience. It was like one of the best experiences of their life. And then the
Mm-hmm.
media doesn't want to share that, but the media wants to share the other part. You know what I mean? So it's just like, like it's just suspect. If you're really thinking through it critically and rationally, I feel like most people will come to that conclusion because they're just like, why would you do that? Like there has to be a disconnect somewhere. So
I think that's completely understandable, and
yeah.
it's completely factual. But I think that we should still empathize with them, right?
Mm-hmm.
I think we should. There is still room for empathy and compassion for them, because at the essence, it's about ignorance, right? They don't
Yeah, yeah,
want
yeah. I agree.
the general public. They don't understand His Holiness's personality. They don't understand where he's coming from. But the media themselves, their profit motive,
Yep.
and then they're in this endless cycle, in this rat race, so to speak. And we should still have compassion for that, because we know that's not the right way. That's not the right path to living a meaningful and fulfilled
No,
life, right?
definitely not.
So I think this is an opportunity for us Tibetans, right, on the macro level, to use that energy that we feel right now, right? Whatever energy it might be sadness, it might be anger, it might be compassion, right? Whatever energy you're feeling right now,
Yeah.
instead of that letting that leak towards, the outside, maybe use that energy to help unite our Tibetan community, because we
Yep.
know that we need to be united. Leaders unite, right? And
Yep.
if we want to provide evidence to the world that His Holiness the Dalai Lama is the greatest leader on earth, his subjects should be united. His
100%.
followers should be united.
Yep.
So we have to do the job as well. And I think this is an opportunity for our Tibetan community to be united. And that's the macro level. On the micro
Yes.
level, I remember watching a Zoom teaching during the pandemic. His Holiness the Dalai Lama Gyaro Rinpoche had a teaching with, I think, the Taiwanese Buddhist Association, whatever, right? A group
Mm-hmm.
from Taiwan.
Yep.
All of these Taiwanese participants had a pen and paper in hand. I was shocked. Every single
Right.
one
Right.
of them
Yeah.
writing down notes as it was being translated from Tibetan to English or Tibetan to Chinese.
Mm-hmm.
Right? I was shocked. Us Tibetans are like this, right?
Right.
Then your family's like, oh, chadi dongge or whatever it may be. So many distractions. Disage, so many distractions, right? We have to be more focused now. As
Yes.
on the micro level, as individuals, we have to be more focused. Use Gyalram's lectures and teachings as an academic subject, as a lecture,
Mm-hmm.
right? And then internalize it, absorb it, not just understand what he's saying, but
Mm-hmm.
how he's saying it, why he's saying it,
Yep.
right? And then meditate on that. Think about it every single day, whether it be for a minute, 5 minutes, or whatever your meditation level it may be, 30 minutes.
Yeah.
I think when we take these small steps and then we self-manage, we are better able to manage the outside world, right? We got to become better self-managers. And I
Yeah.
think it's a time to truly listen to one His Holiness's lecture and write down, you know, take down notes
Mm.
and think about those notes. I during my 2.5 hour, 3 hour audience with Gauramji, um, during the 2 day trip or during the 1 week trip, I took down almost 5 to 6 pages of notes.
Mm.
Right? I'm not trying to be here on the soapbox and just spill down what you guys should do. I'm just telling you guys what I am trying to do. I'm trying to make this negative this negative news into something positive. It's an opportunity, right?
Yes, I
And
agree.
I think another thing. This is my last thing, and I'm gonna get off my soapbox.
No, it's good. It's very interesting.
And this is specifically for the young Tibetans. I have young Tibetan friends that my age that say, "Oh, I'm so excited! I'm gonna about to take Korean. I'm about to take Chinese and French." And it's wonderful that they're interested in all these different languages and on this intellectual pursuit.
Right.
But guess what? And I answer with, "That's great, but what about Tibetan?
Right.
What about Tibetan?" If you are a true follower of His Holiness, the one thing you can do is preserve the culture that he strives on preserving. Is following what he does. Is being a copycat version of what he is, or trying to be, striving to be a copycat version, right?
Yeah.
His Holiness's key message is about happiness and how to achieve that. And all of his knowledge and wisdom is derived from Buddhist philosophy and Buddhist texts. And His Holiness always says, if you truly want to learn Buddhism in the most effective and efficient manner, Tibetan is the best language to do so. And that is the beauty and essence and value of learning Tibetan.
Yeah.
And I think us Tibetans, young Tibetans, we're all caught up in this political movement, right?
Right.
Of free Tibet, etc. This is amazing. It's amazing. And we talked about the value of being engaged in politics before, right? But how about the
Right.
cultural side? Yes, it's more boring to sit down at your desk and learn Tibetan, but it only takes 5 minutes a day, guys.
Yeah.
It only takes 5 minutes a day. And I think that we should take this opportunity to do that, or else His Holiness's message and fight won't you know uh I think it's our job as young Tibetans to bring about
Mm.
His Holiness's message to fruition.
Yeah. No, I definitely agree with that. I think that nowadays there is a lot of young Tibetans who are on like that, like you said, like an intellectual pursuit of learning different languages, sharpening their STEM skills, sharpening their political skills, and that's amazing. That's one amazing aspect of being a human being. You know what I'm saying? Of being not even Tibetan, but a human being, like sharpening your skills. But more than a human being, like we are Tibetan at the end of the day. Like at being real with yourself, like learning Tibetan and becoming the best possible version of yourself within Tibetan that you can. Like you only have one life, you know what I mean? And you should take advantage of the culture that you have. Like you should be able to speak the language that you like grew up on, the language your parents speak, like that they love. It doesn't mean you should be shamed for like not knowing it. I get like that's another aspect of it. It doesn't mean you should be shamed for not knowing it, but it does mean that like being real, like it does matter. Like it does play a critical role in your understanding of Tibetan culture and furthermore like Tibetan news, Tibetan society, Tibetan current events, like all of that requires a strong understanding of Tibetan, and that is a very 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 important point. Like I think that
Yeah.
His Holiness always preaches like learning and tapping into your roots, tapping into your culture, because you only have one culture and you only have one life. Like I said again, like one day we all die, and when we die, nothing else happens. So like it's important to use the time that we have on this earth to maximize the cultural, you know, innate cultural ability that we've been gifted. It's an innate cultural like language. A lot of people don't even have a language. A lot of people don't even have like a culture. I'm not shaming them. I'm just saying like they don't have it. And the fact that we have it as Tibetan Americans, we need to tap into that. We need to become experts in it. And if we're not expert at the current stage, it's okay. Like it's okay if you're not fluent in Tibetan right now. But to take small steps to get even better at the language, to become so fluent that you can just switch between the English, Tibetan, and then throw in the other intellectual pursuits that you're having, the Spanish, Chinese. There's many Tibetans nowadays that can do that. So it's very possible. It's very, very possible. It's just if you set your mind to it and you stay consistent and you stay dedicated on practicing every day, learning every day, using it every day within your own family. Like there's many Tibetans right now, they speak English to their parents, and that's cool. But like like you really could be speaking Tibetan to your parents. You really could be. It's just depending on what you want to do with your life. You know what I mean? Or
Mm-hmm.
whether or not you want to take the effort to be able to do that, because it goes back to you and your mentality. You know what I mean? And just like the way you're moving in life.
Right.
Because it is a very integral part of Tibetan society and Tibetan identity. And like fighting for Tibetan rights, fighting independence is amazing. That is a very, very important part, and it should be applauded. But to do that and to not be able to speak the language, you know what I mean? It's just like there is an aspect of it where tapping into your language is a very, 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 very second level of understanding and deepens your appreciation even for the movement, because it deepens the appreciation that you have for what the movement's trying to do. And then what the movement's trying to do is sustain Tibetan culture. And what does that mean? To sustain the language and what comes with the language, which is the current events, the music, the movies, the politics, all of it. All of it is interconnected. It's all interconnected, as Holiness says. It's like an interconnected web,
Mm-hmm.
and it's important to be connected to the core of that web. And that core of the web is the Tibetan language, because the Tibetan language lets you tap into the feelings that comes with it. Because when you're speaking Tibetan, it's a different type of just like I feel like it's a different type of perspective that you're speaking from. You know what I mean? Like when we're speaking in English, like me and Sarup can speak in English, but we also can speak in Tibetan when we need to, like if we're on the basketball court or something. And it's fluent and it's like quick. You know what I mean? And that's a very like important aspect to have. It's a deeper aspect to a relationship even. So like like that's a very important thing.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I think it's time that we us as the Tibetan community may have this lens of anger or sadness that we're using to see that outside world, right? It may be the case, right? And I think we as Tibetans have done a good job to educate the outside world about His Holiness's perspective, personality, cultural background, right? We've done our job of that. We've done a great job. I've seen many videos, but now I think it's time to use a different lens of empathy and compassion, right? And sharing His Holiness's wisdom to the world. Continue to do so.
Right.
Because that's what His Holiness tries to do. So
Yes.
we should try to do the same. And we should do that, internalize His Holiness's message. And then, I think that's the way that we move forward. And use the energy that we have inside ourselves right now, the energy, the emotions that this news has created. Let's use that for something positive. Let's use that to better ourselves, better our Tibetan community, and so we become better ambassadors of His Holiness. We become a microphone for His Holiness's message.
Yeah.
That was a deep first episode, guys.
Yeah.
But it's the times.
And yeah, thank you so much for tuning in. Be sure to like, share, and subscribe, and also follow our Spotify, Pedra Podcast, and we have a link tree on our Instagram bio if you want to join our mailing list. Be sure to do that, because the Pedra Podcast is more than just a video format. Like, it's a very interesting topic that we just went into, but we also provide a weekly newsletter. That weekly newsletter definitely gives you current events and special information, special Tibetan related news stories and highlights of Tibetan people that are doing amazing things, and Tibetan words of the day that you may not have known, and you can just throw into your arsenal of vocab to use. So it's definitely, thank you guys so much for the support for the past couple months on the newsletter as well. Me, Tidup, and like the rest of the Perja crew really appreciate that.
Shall we end with a Garamsri quote?
Yes.
It's a short one, but I think it resonates with the topic that we went over today. Do not let the behavior of others destroy your inner peace. The Dalai Lama. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you, everyone.